Hi everybody, this is David, and this is being filmed on Thursday, July 21st. It is sweltering outside. So of course, we have a fireside chat with nice warm air blowing toward my already hot, sweaty forehead, but it's worth it. It's a fireside chat. Can't do a fireside chat without a fire, no matter what the temperature. I learned that from a man that lived near a volcano. So, alright, maybe that part's not true. A couple things to start out with. One is, on Monday I was able to do a bike ride from, I live in Portage, I biked to Wisconsin Dells and back, and did a little bit of a different route than I typically do. I try to do this Zen processing where I'll focus for 10 minutes on what do I hear, and then what do I see, what do I smell, then also like what do you taste. There's not a lot to taste when you're riding a bike, and what do you feel, the vibrations from the road. And my bike has developed a weird creaking noise, kind of like a haunted house, like a creaking door. So nothing that's alarming, but I can't seem to get rid of it. So I'll be going down the road, creak, creak, creak. So not sure. One of these days though, hopefully the fork doesn't go because it is a graphite fork on the front. But it was a beautiful day to be out. I knew, looking at the calendar, I had to get it in then, because obviously today would be not a great day to be out there. I think it's 92 already and very humid outside. In Portage every year there's a book sale that the library has, and they allow friends of the library to come to the book sale a day early, and we were friends of the library. So yesterday we attended the book sale. So you can buy books for 50 cents, and it's great for my daughters. I can pick up a lot of books, but there was a man kind of at the front of the line, and he literally had a sack, like a Santa Claus sack. It was red, and this thing was huge. And he comes in and he is just like scooping up the books about like Wisconsin history, and he's making his rounds, and which is fine. I mean, but that must have had 50, 60, 70 books in this sack, and this thing was huge. So like you sling it over his back when he moved to like the next section. But maybe it was Santa. I mean, who knows? I guess if you get a book and it's marked Portage Library inside for Christmas, or it's kind of blacked out, now you know where that came from. I wanted to talk a little bit about the fireside chats. First of all, I don't erase any of the fireside chats. So if I've done a chat for Inclusion 605, but for a class I did 6 months ago, that chat is still online. Now ideally I don't have them linked to this class, but they still are online. And this week I left one that was, anyway, it was linked to a previous video. And I'm not sure actually if that, I thought I had all of those set, but that might have been a reset in Moodle or something like that, and it got linked back. But just if you see something and I'm talking about 2 years ago or something like that, yeah, that's, every fireside chat will be the current module that the current class is in. So again, today is July 21st, 2016. And the reason is every class is unique in how they develop their discussions with the threads, and then also the content that I'm using and introducing during those courses. So I think a few of you got to see some of the vintage ones, but I was able to get those removed. 10 years ago I bought my first Garmin, and I did that when I started my doctoral program down at UW-Madison, actually a little before that, but just so I could navigate downtown. And I recently replaced it with a 6-inch model, and it's amazing the difference. Just how much detail is included in this new Garmin. And you pull up to an off ramp and it shows an image of the off ramp, and probably a lot of you are like, yeah, my car does that, has it built in. Well, I drive a 2007 Buick LaCrosse, and that is not an innate feature to that vehicle. So, but it is really cool, and it has Bluetooth, so I have it synced to my phone, which I had on my previous vehicle. So if I get a call, I don't have to go to the phone, which I wouldn't do anyway. It's not safe. But anyway, technology, just kind of crazy stuff. Thinking back to my grandfather, he was telling me when he was a young man, he's passed away in 1994, but this was probably about 1920 or whatever. He drove a milk truck, it was a Model T, on a real bumpy road, and of course nothing was marked really. And whenever you came up to when there was a washboard effect, and most of the roads were like that, country roads, you'd have to unload the milk, or else I don't know if it would shake out of the containers or whatever the deal. And then he'd have to unload it, he'd have to drive like over this area, and then he'd have to take these heavy canisters and load them back on the truck. And I'm just thinking, boy, Grandpa would be blown away by the Garmin. So, and probably a lot of other things, but I have been working on a movie script and was able to complete that with the producer. So right now it's in a kind of limbo. It's all budgeted, everything like that, but it's in this phase where it goes through kind of the final scheduling of when they need to get wardrobe and special effects and all of those folks together. So probably a likelihood I might be out in Santa Barbara in Los Angeles in about a week, but that would probably just be for like 3 days. But I'm staying in touch with the class, don't worry about that. Because I'm officially director of a few scenes, which is very interesting because I have no background in that at all, outside of these Fireside chats, which I guess I write, direct, and produce. But it's interesting because I was hired initially as a content writer to make sure everything was accurate in this video, in these sections of this film, and then what I started to do is actually morph that into more of the director role, just kind of naturally, of like, here's the facial expression people would need, and here's where the camera would need to be positioned, and the producer recognized that, and he said, well, we'll just have you work in that capacity, I'm sure, with the authentic director and the whole crew and stuff. But so kind of funny and fun. So August 2nd, you're like, boy, Dave, you're chatty today. I'm like, yeah, it's a hot day. I haven't been able to get outside, so let's have a little talk here. But August 2nd is coming up, and that will mark 14 years that we have lived here in this house in Portage. And I remember, and the neighborhood's changed a lot since then. People moved out, moved in. But when we moved in, it was within a couple days we were outside, and the neighbors kind of gathered around us and let us know that they were actively fighting the city on any attempt to put sidewalk in our neighborhood, and kind of hoping that we would fall in line with that, with that fight. So but hey, there's no sidewalk out in front of my house, even though we are 2 blocks away from 2 elementary schools, a middle school, and 4 blocks away from a high school. But so, but yeah, kind of an interesting way to meet your neighbors is, everybody gets together. And oh, by the way, we have an active petition going to not have sidewalk here. So, but yet they have sidewalk in parts of town that make no sense at all, and brand new sidewalks like put in this year on parts of town where nobody goes, and it's just, but anyway, it's Portage, and it's a cool place. So I've been doing office cleaning. You can't tell it from down here, but I do have the guitar in the other room, and I'm down to one box. I've been tossing a lot of my old UW stuff. I have a huge box of books to take to the library, but I'll wait until their sale is done and then let them work on these books for next year. I've just been getting rid of a ton of stuff. I could have used the guy's sack who was playing Santa Claus for some of the stuff that I tossed out. I'm still going through and needing to get all of this done. So I did see Ghostbusters with my oldest daughter, and she will be 10 in less than a month. So one of the things at the theater, and we have a wonderful theater in Portage, and so you get a large soda, which is a large soda now, soda plus ice, but and when you get it, they say you have one free refill on this. So I'm thinking, like, okay, if I do actually manage to drink this during the movie, if I refilled it, I mean, that would become like, I mean, my soda blood content would be like, 0.25 or something like that. I'd be way over the limit of that in cafe. It's crazy. It'd be like drinking a gallon of Pepsi or whatever. But I was kind of stunned at that. So it's not only like, here you get this massive container of a soda, but by the way, you have a free refill. I'm sure most people probably don't do that unless they refill it at the end and take it with them. But I don't drink soda much at all. I have water. It's over there. But I just thought that was funny, because I'm thinking, who refills these things? I mean, really, like, I have to refill this. I could take it and put a fire out with it. So, so Module 3 is right now the 18th of July, ending July 24th. And then Module 4, looking ahead, starts July 25th and runs through July 31st. So we're getting to the end of the month, and then we really don't have too much left in the class. Once we get into August, I'll probably right away, once whatever we get to like August 1st, I'll probably open up the rest of the modules so you can just look ahead and see what's there and start planning, because there's a bigger assignment at the end, the Bill Porter plan. But yeah, I think August 19th and we're done. A little reminder up front here of make sure that you have everything in by the 19th, because if you don't, that's bad. I have a short window to turn around and get grades to Viterbo. Also, you'll be getting an email from Viterbo asking you to do a course eval, so please do your course evaluation. That should happen in probably a couple of weeks. So you're like, Dave, we've been in here 15 minutes or whatever, and you've just talked about yourself. Okay, so I want to give some shout outs, and the first one is Katie. Chapter 3, you had a post where you said change is hard. And I'm thinking, yeah, change is hard. And like in my last 3 years, I've gone through a lot of professional change, and you're definitely, when you get out of a routine, it's uncomfortable. It's also a great growth opportunity. But you brought up something that's very important, and it's overlooked, and that is time to observe other people and how they do it. So if you're asked to do like co-teaching, you're going to be co-teaching this one class. You haven't co-taught before. If you could observe somebody doing co-teaching and then ask them questions, maybe look at materials, just how much more at ease that would make you feel versus like reading a chapter on co-teaching. Even going online and watching a video about co-teaching would be better than that. But one of the things that happens in schools a lot is, and saying this from my experience, tend to send a lot of people to conferences, and also tend to bring in outside presenters but we don't look to our internal experts and don't take advantage of just the opportunity to observe other teachers, just to see what they're doing, their delivery style, their format, just to, maybe there's something they're using that you think would be cool in your lesson plans, the style that you use, and maybe you have something to share. But just that we tend to, look way out there and not look to what's in front of us a lot of times. And that's something I thought I did pretty well in my role as an administrator, is to help people observe their peer educators. And there's a fine line with that, because some people don't like to be observed. They feel like it's evaluation, and I think you need to honor that in these situations, but I mean other times you are observed to be evaluated, to administrators coming in, but hopefully people can move beyond that too. I remember years ago when I started out as a speech language therapist in a medical setting, we had our notes, our chart notes, reviewed like every 2 weeks for 1 hour. We had a meeting, and so basically one of your entries would be copied off, and then another therapist, and then you would look at somebody else's entry, and you knew who it was, like it had the name on it, and then they would shred it afterwards and stuff. But your job was to go through it and then write down if there were any areas that didn't make sense to you, like things you really liked about it, or things like you might question, but that might sound evaluative, but it really wasn't. It was just to make sure that we were whatever we were doing was kind of consistent with each other, and if there were things that you saw you could incorporate into best practice, or if there were things that you just didn't quite understand why this was here, that then that person could explain it. And it's like, yeah, maybe that's something, again, I want to consider. But when we first started the process, I was really defensive. I mean, I thought I wrote really good notes. It was the SOAP notes: subjective, objective, assessment, and then, I don't know, measurable or whatever it was, but or subjective, effective, I don't know. Whatever it is, I wrote a note. And I thought they were well done, and just, one or two things somebody just questions, and you get defensive. So I think taking the opportunity, Katie, to get in and to just be present when other educators are delivering instruction starts to alleviate that. I know once we got into this process of the chart reviews, after a while it just became second nature, and you'd look and if somebody had a question, you'd answer it without being in a defensive posture. So, but again, we don't do that, and if we do it, it feels so unnatural that it does feel kind of more evaluative, and like, what are you looking for that's not right? So, Tracy, you're talking about being careful of language you use around kids, and you frame that kind of with, or bracket that within enabling. Yeah, very true, because kids are and adults are very perceptive on how you treat other students with disabilities, and the language that you use. And I have a specific story to share with that, and well, anyway, I thought I wrote it down, but I remembered. So I was the language you're using. I was called into a meeting. It was myself and the high school principal, and it was a parent of a high school freshman with Down syndrome. The student had Down syndrome, and the student was told during the commons time, in the commons area, or lunch, or if he put his feet up on the table, to put his feet down. That wasn't appropriate. If other students did that, that was a detention. So when his mom came in and met with us, she said, I want him to be treated the same as everybody else, which means he's getting a detention for putting his feet up yesterday on the table. And it was something where, and it was a good meeting, but she said, you know, he's very aware he's not supposed to do this, and if he thinks he can do it, he's going to keep doing it. It's an enabling thing, and even though staff think they're helping him out because maybe he didn't understand, or you know, they're giving him a break, they're not helping him. So yeah, he got brought in and had his detention and served it, but all in a, that's a good thing how that all unfolded. And it was one of the things too, it gave us a chance to look and kind of reflect and say, yeah, he knew that was wrong. I mean, he knew that was the incorrect thing to do, because immediately when he was told put him down, he put him down and kind of had a little smile on his face. But I remember that. So thanks for mentioning that. Lucia, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, please let me know. But I think I have it right. Culture of respect, and a culture to respect diversity, fostering that within the school. And I go back to 2009, the Centers for Disease Control had a study that they released on school connectedness. So you can type in Google 2009 CDC school connectedness report, and it'll come up. It's well done, actually, very well done. And it's several studies which come together into one report, which is very easy to read and very applicable in schools. But it talks about the main factors in building a positive school culture that's inclusive, and then the many statistical impacts that had, such as less violence, less truancy, and better academic performance, students reporting, out more that they like school on, rating scales and things like that. I mean, so just that's out there, it's big, yet what happens on school report cards from the state, there isn't anything for school connectedness. So, you talk about culture and respecting diversity, and I'm in full agreement, and you're right there saying, this is important, and it needs to be then reflected, I believe, or maybe here's where it's visible, like on that state report card. Because if it's something that's not acknowledged, the pressure's on for, reading gains and math gains and whatever, that these other areas such as school connectedness, which impact all of those, just kind of get lost. And part of that comes in on respecting and understanding diversity. So, but your post was very well done on that, so just direct people to locate that. Another thing your post made me think about is I read an article recently, and by the way, it's going to be a longer fireside chat, so, but this article was about a nurse and a younger RN who had rainbow-colored hair and some tattoos. And she was saying that she was being questioned by, I don't know, one of the patients or whatever, and a patient who was older than she was. Basically, I think kind of questioning two things. One is her professionalism, and one is like her competency. And her response to that was tactfully, and again, I'm paraphrasing and piecing this together from what I remember, but was that, a lot of people, first of all, this is who I am, and this has no impact on the work that I do and how I serve you. I'm very, very skilled, very dedicated to being a nurse. And this is the way I like to express myself, plus a lot of people do appreciate that you come in and you see, some rainbow hair and just some other things, because, let's face it, you go into a hospital or medical, it's typically that's because there's something not right, and it just alleviates some of that tension right off the bat. So, you know, it's like that Patch Adams with Robin Williams, you know, coming in with like in a clown costume or something like that, you know, into children's area in a hospital. But so anyway, I think that's one of the things, is to respect diversity, and as we get into that, it's even teachers respecting the diversity of parents, and parents expressing themselves in different ways. And even you know, like I have friends that, you know, have wild hair, or, you know, my glasses are just pretty standard, but they've got like all the multicolored stuff and things like that, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's fine. You've seen my hair like kind of wild. That's just because, I don't know, and it's getting cut tomorrow, so this is the last of the long hair for a while. But we tend to make kind of judgments sometime off of that. In church, I remember a year ago, after Christmas, our Buildings and Grounds Committee and then other volunteers were working to take down the wreaths and reorganize the front of church back to the way that it was. And one of the boys who was working was completely goth. Completely. Like, I don't know if you remember the old video, Jane's Addiction, where they're walking down the grocery store, and I think they're all goth. I think that song was called Caught Stealing Was. Anyway, this young man was so meticulous in cleaning, and he was vacuuming and making sure that anything that didn't get picked up by the vacuum, like he was going down picking up the little pieces that came off of a wreath and stuff like that. But he was very quiet, like to himself. But, you know, he's got like the chains coming down off of the pants and the makeup, but just the nicest kid, and working hard, and part of that, and wanted, you know, to just be a part of working to restore the church so we could have mass. But if you would see him, like, your initial thought, it just didn't fit the scene. And even myself, and again, I teach inclusion, and you just don't, your initial response is, I'm not exactly sure what to expect from, you know, this young man. And you have, quickly, I'm cognizant I overcome that, but that's still a response, and I think we need to take the time and also teach kids to, it's okay to change your opinion. Like, you don't have to stick with an initial reaction, which might be sometimes people get stuck into trying to defend an initial response, even though they don't feel that way anymore, but that's something that you know, they've made known, so they defend it to the hilt. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't, and I didn't say anything to anyone, but in my mind, I'm like, this kid's really cool. I mean, he's working, he's doing everything up there, and actually the goth stuff was pretty cool. I'm not goth, but that's cool stuff. I mean, I was looking in, and I'm like, so I was learning, and I was appreciating, actually did a little research kind of on the goth, you know, culture, and even some of the people today. There's a counselor in Wisconsin who was extreme goth at like an alternative school when she was in high school, and talks about kind of that need to be kind of into this alternative, this culture, but then now how she uses that as a way to relate to kids, and she's not goth anymore. But I don't know where I was going with that. So anyway, stick with me today. I've been outside, maybe I'm a little wonky because of the heat, but if anything, it's going to get more fun. So looking back on, let's look at our current module, Module 3. So children who learn together. That theme has been constant throughout. And an example of learning together. So I also remember when Walmart started offering the mobility scooters. And maybe it was Kmart back then, I don't know, but I might have mentioned this previously, but somebody would come in and use one of those, and they'd come down an aisle, and you'd notice it because nobody used that stuff before. And now you can go to Walmart, and maybe there's 5 of those in use, or 5 people that you pass or interact with, and then if you leave the store, it's like I couldn't tell you if there were any. I mean, it's just become part of the culture. And I think that's the children who learn together part of it. Just becomes, well, this is our culture. Why wouldn't we include everybody? I mean, that's the question. I actually worked with a high school once. This was a very interesting take. They were against, so they had many diversity clubs, and they had a gay-straight alliance, and the GSA was very adamant about bringing all of these diversity clubs together and forming just like one diversity club, because they thought having the different clubs actually was not supporting diversity, but creating kind of islands of diversity, if that argument can be understood. But I thought that was pretty intriguing, because when I had met with the group, the GSA, the students were very clear that their purpose in the group was entire school diversity and entire school acceptance, and they wanted whoever was coming to the school to have a good experience, and existing students have a good experience and to feel embraced. So they immediately were wide picture. They weren't, into if a student identifies as this or this or this. It was like, no, it's our school, everybody welcome, safe, treat it with respect. But yes, I remember they were very much wanting to unify all of these other kind of splinter groups, like I don't know, East Asian Studies group or something like that. But so talking about how we treat others too, you model it and other kids model it, but it's so important for an inclusive environment. When you see it not being done, and we know this with bullying, to identify it and use it as a teaching experience, or to just identify this is not the way that we treat each other. I had my own personal experience with that. We could go on vacation. We arrive in Superior, and it is just storming. Some of you know, like I think up in Highway 2 Ashland, so right outside Superior, like roads are washed out and a lot of damage. But it's just pouring and lightning, and we got to the Best Western, and the power had been out, just came back on. So the manager, there was nobody else there. The manager and came in. You could tell he was pretty frantic, and got up to the desk, and his computers were rebooting, and he said, I'm going to need a little bit of time for these to reboot before I can process you in and then get your cards ready. I said, yeah, no problem, And then he said, power went out here, and it stormed. I said, yeah, where that, so take your time, don't worry about it. And this guy comes out from an adjacent hallway where there's rooms, and he's wearing like a suit, so something important was going on in his life. Older than me, and he comes storming up to the front desk, and he's demanding that the internet be restored for him, and how he needed to be compensated. And this was just unbelievable that this could happen, and just all of these things, just this angry tone. And the manager was very professional, and said, "I'm sorry, town lost power, lightning storm. We're rebooting. I can come down and let you know the moment everything's back up, and it shouldn't be long." And the guy said, "No, I don't want you coming down." He just stomped away. And I turned to the manager and I said, I apologize that you had to endure that. That was very, who knows what's happening in that man's life right now, but that's no way to treat someone. And come on, it's a storm and power goes out. And I know the manager appreciated that, because he just said, because what could I do in that case? But in situations like that, again, helping students to express when they see something that's not right, a definition of what respect is, like right there, tangibly, that was not respect. But I think terms like respect, and this is one thing when I worked with the studio, I worked very hard. A lot of the vernacular that they used in the film, I thought was too abstract to really be relatable to what would actually happen during, the film's about a school intruder, but anyway, I really worked with them on saying, let's change up the language of what police might say or what students might say, because this is being framed in language that I just think wouldn't be used. Or like we get into things like respect and whatever, I said, whenever we come across terms that are a little bit nebulous, let's act them out or give examples to go with those. So, which worked well. I wish I could give you a better example of when that actually happened, but that I just remember one of the situations was a student was supposed to in the script was supposed to run in a zigzag pattern and whatever. So then, when it's filmed, that actor just has this thing run in a zigzag pattern, and I said, that's too abstract, because there's actually like a way that you would run. Like, I've studied this. Back in even World War II, there were ways that the ships would go in certain patterns to decrease the likelihood of being attacked and things. So I said, you just can't say zigzag, because we can have 5 actors in here and they're all going to do it different. So we want some consistency, so let's define this out. And then actually we'll demonstrate what it is, and then have that filmed. People are like, what? But okay. Something too is children who learn together. One thing is kids have, and adults, but kids have a lot of tacit knowledge. So kids know what's right and wrong and fairness. And what happens though is the vocabulary to express that sometimes isn't there. And actually in a lot of so maybe it seems like it's not as developed as it is. I think this was an example of this happened maybe in the last 20 years. We used to have sandlot baseball, or at least when I was growing up, and that was a lot more than 20 years ago. But all the kids, neighborhood kids, country kids would get dropped off for biking, walking, whatever. One baseball field in our hometown had a wood picket snow fence that went around it, and a railroad track right in back of that. But you just show up, and you pick teams, and the older kids would kind of take the lead, and you divided up what was fair, so teams were balanced. You knew what was fair and what wasn't, but yet there weren't these big explanations that went with it. We had a student with one leg and did have a prosthetic. But for him, you'd go digging through the big steel, empty 55-gallon drum trash barrels until you found a piece of cardboard, and that would become his first base. So that would just be moved up because he couldn't run very fast. So if he got a hit, he could run up, and that's his first base. Then once he got there, he'd be safe, and then he would actually get to go up to the regular first base, and then the rest would have to be kind of on his own. But just just children who, we knew how to do that. We didn't need people to tell us, like, this is the right thing to do, or this is how to do it. And I think today it's so complicated, and also with social media, of kids trying to articulate how they feel and how they internalize, because kids internalize a lot more today than what they did in the past. And I'm just saying that because I know, because I've researched that. And it's working to give them the words of, when do you not feel included? And it can be what you would perceive as the most popular student in the class, as far as like maybe athletics and just having friends and stuff, but maybe, they don't feel included in part of, their, with their peers because of whatever. I remember one student, it was because she had red hair, and she was the only one that had red hair, and no one ever made a comment about it or anything, but she always felt like that. That always made her feel uncomfortable. But there was a study done, so you're really getting your dime out of this one. There was a study done back, the military's done a ton of studies on trying to have people in high stakes decision making articulate, verbalize when they know what to make decisions. And they've had very poor success with that, but in the 80s, millions of dollars were given to, I think it was UCLA. It was, researcher's name was Klein. I mentioned it, referenced it in my work, but basically, so you imagine all these grad students placed at fire departments around Los Angeles, and their job for whatever number of weeks is to go out with the firefighters on calls and sit there and observe what's going on, and then ask firefighters why they did certain things, once the fire was out. Things you probably couldn't do today, and one of the things that came up was a phenomena of what's known as a soft roof. And having a firefighting background of my own, I know, what we're talking about here. But there is a point on a roof when a firefighter will recognize that the roof is no longer safe to be on, that it could, it could cave, or else you could have a burn through or something like that. But it's a sixth sense type of thing. And so one of the things, and almost to a T, like firefighters or the chief or whoever, they would recognize it, and boom, you'd be off the roof. A minute later, roof, caves in or something like that. But they tried to articulate, like, how do you know? How do you sense this? And it actually wasn't like a physical feeling so much of like a soft roof, but just this again, this aura or whatever of just knowing that it was time to get off of this roof. So went through millions of dollars in trying to get people, to say, okay, what was happening, to replay that. Nope, couldn't come up with it. So that's another thing, is when you're having discussions about inclusion and diversity and just everybody feeling included, there's something, restorative justice circles I would look into. Is where everybody gets in a circle and they kind of talk, and maybe the question is like, what makes you feel included in our class? And tell me about what makes you not feel included. So then they're facing everybody else, and they might say, you go around the whole thing, this student. And I've been a part of that, and I think that's effective, and that can happen pretty quick. And that's a calibrating type of thing, maybe something you do every couple months, or if all of a sudden you see behaviors starting to spike, or you start seeing some students being excluded or something like that. But does a nice job. Module 4, looking ahead, we have a video from Rita Pearson, and it's phenomenal. She's so high energy. I love this video. So I'm not going to talk any more about it because I would give away all of the great parts. But it's outstanding. So that's our kind of welcome to Module 4, and it's not a very long video. It's not as long as this video. We talk a lot about organizational supports in Module 4, and kind of what I'm getting at in there in referencing through, you'll be looking at how inclusion happened at some different schools. And it's very contextual because it mentions, it frames it around students in the book. But I'm really getting at things like common planning time, and even you have common planning time at your school. Are the special education teachers a part of that common planning time? Or is it just that all of the third grade teachers have that common planning time? And is it daily? Is it weekly? Because if you don't have common planning time, then co-teaching is not going to be effective in most cases. So we get into that organizational support, which comes then into tackling some of these things that have, blocks of granite that haven't been moved in centuries, such as the school schedule. We can't change that. Well, yeah, you can. And I visited schools, and I was in schools, elementary through high school, that changed schedules, going to trimesters, going to block schedules, whatever, with the goal of getting schedules so there could be more professional learning community time and common planning time. And it can happen. So, takes time, but it can happen. It's nothing you should look at and say, oh, we got to try to change the schedule and we have a new principal and it's not going to work. No, it does. It works. Give it a try. One of the things too is looping, and for inclusive practices, I was in an elementary school early in my career that looped. So if you were a first grader, when you got to second grade, you had the same teacher. When you got to third grade, you had the same teacher. So that teacher really got to know the students got to know the teacher, students got to know each other. So I think that sense of inclusion developed really strong because the students had been with each other, and also they understood the expectation of the teacher understood the students. When they came back after summer break, there wasn't this whole learning process of having to learn, what are the rules with the teacher, and the teacher knowing students, knowing background and things like that. So I don't know why looping doesn't happen more often. Back then it was like a growing trend. When I say back then, it's almost like the horse and buggy times in a way, but we just don't see it much anymore, or at least I don't see it. But looping was awesome. And of course when you get to middle and high school, that can happen in the form of like advisories, but at elementary, looping certainly is a way to help promote inclusion. So one of the things too is when you look at if you're going to measure, how should I say this, effectiveness of common planning time or something like that, like how are you going to measure that? Are you going to do a pre-post survey? Are you going to objective or subjectively ask people to just discuss it and kind of code out some things that are saying whatever? But I think one of the things is you have to come up with some baseline, and even a baseline for what your classroom inclusion level is, and maybe that's from a survey that's done with your students. Like I feel that I'm included in my classroom, and that I have friends here, and that people understand that I have strengths, and they understand that I have weaknesses, and they still like me, and whatever it is. But and again, looking for change from baseline after a while, and people get so stuck on, here's the baseline of what our culture is in our classroom or our school, and like here's our goal, and they write it up, And if you don't get to this goal of saying, 80% of the students will report out that, they love coming to school or whatever it is. And if you don't get to 80%, well, then it's like, we failed. So, no, you're looking change from baseline. And change from baseline could be backwards change from baseline, because things might get worse before they get better, because you might be implementing a completely different approach to things than students are used to. Like, I can tell you, when a school changes a schedule, the first year after that, it typically doesn't go the greatest, at least at the start. You gotta get all the gears and everything kind of to fall into place. And once it does, then you look back a year or two later and you say, we kind of dipped down right afterwards, but wow, was it worth it, because we've just made so much change from baseline on the other side. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of goals, as far as, I shouldn't say that. I'm a fan of setting goals that are growth directed, not attainment directed, because I think attainment gets way too much locked into either you succeed or you fail. And in an inclusive setting, I think that gets really hard for students too. And when you hear Rita Pearson speak, and I'm just going to say this, there's the one student, and she talks about writing a +2 on his paper. That is an act of looking at growth and not looking at attainment. And you'll understand the moment that comes up in that video of what I'm talking about. So it has been this has been a longer one, probably the longest one. So I hope it had some value for you. I did write this up. I worked yesterday. I wanted to get down a number of, I think, points today, and for me personally, there's been a lot of posts that have been made, so I wanted to build off of those. Keep posting. You've done a great job. Stay active. I continue to go in. Again, we have 20 students, which is a big class. Like, most classes are about 10 to 12 for Inclusion 605. So a good thing with a big class is you have a lot of posts. That's a very good thing. A harder thing for me is to kind of get around and to make sure that I'm responding to everybody. I can get in and usually read everything, but as far as like responding, that's hard. And sometimes you'll see like, David responded at 1:23 a.m. or something like that. But don't feel that you're just posting and nothing's getting looked at, because I'm super impressed. And going back, somebody had a presentation about the Paralympics and then also Special Olympics, but the Paralympics, and I remember just recently watching a documentary on the carbon foot in Paralympics, where now it's gotten to be so advanced that they have to figure out a way to actually make it fair, because once athletes understand how to use these, they can run at these incredible paces. So you start to have those kind of questions come up of, now you've kind of past inclusion to becoming almost this bionic wonder, which I think is going to be an interesting point as we get into the future too, of when people do have maybe things like that, what is that really going to mean as far as inclusion? So I don't know. I'm pondering, but all right. So I have been enduring heat in a hot basement, 92 and humid outside, but it's good. It's not desert heat though, so it's not a dry heat. It's more like a Florida heat. And you've been doing wonderful. I'm really enjoying class. So enjoy this module, and I think if you go in someplace, you can actually play it faster if you want to get through it. I love podcasts, so what I do is I will download a lot of presentations, kind of like the one I'm giving, and I'll just listen to them in the car or just listen to them with headphones on while I'm doing something else. So I listen to a ton of podcasts. That's like all I listen to. So podcast, crickets, and the creaking of my bike. Creak, creak, creak. So, all right. Thanks again, and think what we got a couple hot days, and who knows, maybe after that we start to get into the little bit of cooler part of summer. So, thank you.